Accounting is about keeping score about what has happened in the past. Finance is, they're like the wizards. They're telling the future. So, I brought my friend Chris along for this episode because Chris isn't a controller, so he's on the accounting side. I'm an FP&A director, so I'm on the finance side. So, in my opinion, you know what? It's like Microsoft versus Apple. Or Mike Tyson in his prime versus that other guy.
This is his podcast, so I'm going to take that.
But in all seriousness, a lot of people get confused because they are very, very, very related, but there are some differences between the two. So let's get into it. I mean, Chris, from a controller standpoint, I mean, when you think about accounting, how would you define it?
It is important for an investor, the business, to know how did we perform over a period of time, whether that's a month, a quarter, or a year. Accounting documents according to the generally accepted accounting principles, also known as GAAP. This is how the company performed over that period of time. Now, once we're done, we send those numbers to finance and they predict this is where we're going.
Yes. So, I mean, which is why I kind of say, I mean, when the accounting does their job, in which they do a phenomenal job, and all jokes aside, I mean, I am an accountant by background. I mean, I have a CPA. Actually, Chris and I we got a master's degree in accounting from the University of Notre Dame. Go Irish. And so I have an accounting background. I understand accounting. I mean, now I'd say over the past probably 8 years, I've done more finance, operational type work. But I will say that once, as you said, accounting tracks, okay, how did we do? Now, there are some technical pieces to accounting as far as you mentioned with GAAP. It's figuring that piece out. But then when that's done, they hand it over to finance, and then finance is looking at our results based on what we know. How do we tell the story about what happened in the business, and how do we tell the story about what can be expected going forward?
Yes.
So that gives the background. Now, knowing that they account for what has happened in the past, we tell the future, whereas finance is responsible for telling the story. There's some friction that happens. So
There is. And it's a healthy friction because accounting, we have to make sure the numbers are right. One, we're guided by GAAP. Two, if we do it wrong, we go to jail, such as Enron and them. But we have to make sure those numbers are right because if we give finance incorrect information, then they can get us in a wrong situation. And it's important that we, as accountants, stick to what is true and accurate and correct. Despite the pressure that finance wants it yesterday, and they don't even care if it's wrong. Just give me a number so I can say it. Then you give them a number and it's wrong. They want to know, why was it wrong? Well, you asked me when I was still cooking, so let me finish. Go ahead, finance.
That I will say that does happen because a lot of time, I mean, finance, when they're working on something, they're either trying to get numbers to senior leadership. So they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I tell the senior leaders the story? Now, it's a lot easier for finance if we had the numbers yesterday. But we understand accounting, they want to make sure all the numbers are perfect. Now, in finance, we don't necessarily need the numbers to be perfect all the time. Sometimes we can project using directional numbers. Now, the challenge is, from an accounting standpoint, from GAAP, directional is unacceptable.
No, we don't even know what that is.
But for finance, directional, hey, if I understand the business and I understand the history, hey, I can take the directional numbers and I can run with it.
Yes. Now, imagine this. You're either sitting in a ship or a car. The front two seats, the driver and the passenger, those are finance. The people in the back two seats are facing behind the car. Those are your accountants. And we have to work together to make sure that we're getting to the right place. And the finance can't look backwards, and accounting is not supposed to look forward. We're just supposed to tell you this is what we have done in the past. These are the turns that we've made. This is where we've gone wrong. And this is what you need to be aware of when you're going forward. And we hand that over the wall to finance, and then they turn around. Well, they drive the car or the ship.
Yes. I mean, because there are some areas where it does start to, I guess you say, there are some crossover. Whereas from a finance standpoint, some of the projections, we look at how has historical trends gone. And that kind of gives us an idea of, hey, how do we need to forecast going forward? And then from an accounting standpoint, depending on how technical it is, sometimes they do need to say, hey, what's the future likelihood of this deal look like, or this situation look like? And that kind of does play a role in how they account for it in the present.
Yes.
So there is some overlap. But hey, before we wrap it up, any last things you want to say?
I just want to say, accounting is better. And the reason why I say that is, in order to be a good finance person, you need to go to accounting, because you have to understand GAAP. You should understand how you're accounting for things, what's important, where the numbers are coming from, how you get to the numbers. For instance, if you're cooking for Thanksgiving, a big dinner or whatever, if you're in the kitchen and you're in the middle of it and you're asking for how it's going to taste, we don't really know. You got to let me finish my seasonings. You got to let me put it in the oven, put my cheese on it. Wait till I get to a point where you can taste it, and then we can talk about if it's good or not. But don't ask me to taste it when I just pulled the pot out the kitchen. I mean, it doesn't really work. But what it also allows you to do is to understand this is how this thing is being made. This is how we're getting from our numbers on day one to our numbers at the end of the month, so that you can move over to finance, and now you know how everything's working.
So there you have it. The difference between finance and accounting. You have my perspective, which we're like Tyson, and you have his perspective. They're like